On a cold morning in 1983, the day a new language was supposed to quietly knit far-flung computers into one shared network, nothing happened. No switch flipped, no universal handshake, no "now we all speak TCP/IP." In a small chain of meeting rooms and budget hearings, the idea was judged too open, too hard to control, too expensive to secure, and the funding and political patience that had kept the experiment alive finally snapped. The networks that existed stayed trapped in their own bubbles, and the word internet never became a household word because the thing itself never became real. The divergence point is simple. The push for a single, interoperable end-to-end network standard fails, and with it the belief that any computer, anywhere, should be able to talk to any other without asking permission from a gatekeeper. At first, most people don't notice. Researchers still exchange data. Just slower, by tape and courier, by phone calls and faxed pages, by mailed journals and conference halls where the same faces trade the same preprints hand to hand. Companies still connect computers, just privately, using leased lines, proprietary protocols, and controlled gateways. Governments still build networks, just compartmentalized, designed for command and reliability, not openness. The domino effect begins in the places where openness would have mattered most: universities, startups, and ordinary households. Without a global public network, email does not become a universal habit. It becomes a service you buy from a provider that works mainly inside its own walls, like a phone system that can call only some numbers. People learn to live with walled communications the way they once lived with long-distance calling plans: expensive, limited, and full of friction. A young engineer in one city can still send a message to another if their systems have a negotiated bridge, if the formats match, if the billing works, if someone approved the connection. Every yes requires contracts, and every contract creates a toll booth. That single missing convenience changes the rhythm of daily life. Job applications are mailed or delivered. Forms are printed and stamped. Customer support is the number you call and wait on. News arrives at scheduled hours, not as a constant stream. You can feel it in the soundscape of the era. The busy tones of modems remain an enthusiast's hobby, not the heartbeat of the world, and fax machines keep their place on office desks far longer because they are universal. In a way digital messages never become. In this world, something like online access still exists, but it resembles a patchwork of paid services and national systems rather than one borderless space. Some countries lean into state-approved information terminals, building public kiosks that deliver banking, directories, ticketing, and official notices. Others rely on private online services that feel like cable TV, bundled channels of text, shopping, and chat behind a subscription. You can go online, but you don't go to the web, because there is no web. No open layer of pages anyone can publish and link together. No global address book of URLs. No shared browser experience. Information becomes a product packaged by intermediaries, not a landscape you roam that alters power. Publishers keep their gatekeeping role because distribution remains scarce. Record labels and studios keep tighter control because copying and sharing stays physical or confined to small circles. Newspapers shrink more slowly because their monopoly on being the morning's window to the world lasts longer. The evening news remains an event families plan around. And yet, because there is no single digital commons, trust and rumor behave differently too. Misinformation still exists. People have always whispered and printed pamphlets, but it doesn't metastasize instantly across continents through viral feeds, and neither does grassroots truth. A scandal breaks in one city and travels by reporters, not by retweets. A protest organizes by phone trees and flyers, not by hashtags. Is that safer or just slower? The economy follows the missing network like a shadow. Without global e-commerce, retail remains anchored in streets and catalogs, and mail order stays a giant industry. Slick seasonal booklets, call centers, warehouses humming with human pickers and conveyor belts. Supply chains still globalize, but coordination is heavier and more centralized. Big firms thrive because they can afford private networks and electronic data interchange. Small firms struggle to reach beyond their region because finding customers is not one search box away. In the absence of search engines, directories and curated databases become the maps of the world. A new kind of company rises, not the platform that connects everyone to everyone, but the broker that connects some people to some information, for a fee. Advertising remains dominated by broadcast and print, where audience measurement is coarse and persuasion is crafted for mass taste rather than micro-targeted profiles. Without cheap behavioral tracking at internet scale, the surveillance economy is smaller. Yet surveillance doesn't vanish. It shifts. States and corporations still watch, but they watch in closed systems, telecom metadata, subscriber databases, proprietary service logs. It's less ubiquitous but often less transparent, because oversight is easier to avoid when the public cannot see the infrastructure. The tech industry grows, but it grows sideways. Instead of a few global web giants built on network effects, you see regional titans, telecommunications conglomerates that own portals, media companies that own databases, hardware firms that dominate because software distribution is still packaged and sold rather than downloaded. Software evolves with a different heartbeat. Updates come on disks, CDs, and later secure cartridges. Enterprise systems are installed by teams, not by clicking deploy. Bugs live longer because patching is slower. Stability is prized because changing millions of devices overnight is impossible. Innovation still happens, humans still invent, but the curve is gentler, less explosive, more tied to institutions that can afford distribution. The idea of a teenager in a bedroom shipping an app to the world in a weekend becomes folklore rather than routine. In offices, digital transformation means local networks, intranets that never touch the outside, and thick binders of procedures. Telework exists, but it is rare and expensive, reserved for executives and specialists with secure lines. The city stays the center of white-collar gravity because presence matters when connection is costly. That changes the geography of opportunity. Fewer remote careers, fewer global freelance markets, more pressure to move where jobs are. Education changes too. Without a free ocean of online tutorials, learning remains tied to schools, libraries, and whoever can afford proprietary training. Libraries become even more sacred, quiet cathedrals of access where terminals connect to curated databases, and interlibrary loans are lifelines. Encyclopedias do not collapse into a free online collective. They remain products, updated in editions corrected by committees. And science feels the absence sharply. The rapid open sharing of code and data that accelerates modern research is replaced by slower pipelines, journals, conferences, private consortiums. Breakthroughs still arrive, but replication and collaboration cost more time, and time is the most expensive fuel of discovery. Medicine, engineering, climate modeling, everything that benefits from massive distributed collaboration moves with more inertia. Culture, meanwhile, takes on a different texture. Music scenes stay more local because discovery is not algorithmic. You find bands through radio, clubs, magazines, and friends, and the rise of a worldwide niche fandom is harder without worldwide niche distribution. Fan communities still exist, but they gather in letters, zines, and small paid forms. The feeling is intimate and slow, like waiting for a pen pal's reply. Video games lean into couch co-op and LAN parties because online matchmaking is fragmented and often restricted to specific services. The phrase "going viral" means a rumor on talk radio or a video passed around on physical media, not an overnight global wave. When mobile phones spread, the world does not leap into a pocket internet. It leans into voice, text, and controlled portals. SMS becomes the universal glue because it fits the old telecom model, standardized, billable, interoperable in a way richer data never is. People trade short messages like sparks in the dark, and entire youth cultures bloom inside 160 characters because that's where the freedom is cheap enough to live. Phones can access mobile services, but they look like menus, not open browsing. Carefully arranged options, carrier partnerships, paid gateways. The modern expectation, any question, any time, answer in seconds, never fully forms. Instead, people remember more phone numbers, keep more paper notes, rely more on human expertise. Travel feels different. You buy maps, ask strangers, call hotels. You still get lost, and being lost is not a failure of planning. It's part of the story. Politics evolves under these constraints. Campaigns remain television battles and ground games, not data-driven content wars fought in personalized feeds. Activism relies on unions, churches, local organizers, and physical presence. It can be harder to spark sudden mass movements, but it can also be harder for movements to dissolve into online outrage without real structure. Authoritarians have less need to flood social media with bots, but they have an easier time bottlenecking information because the main channels are fewer and more centralized. Democracies, too, rely more on gatekeepers, for better and worse. Fewer chaotic megaphones, more dependence on institutions people may or may not trust. And then there is the personal life that never becomes a public performance. Without social platforms as we know them, identity is less quantified. Popularity is not a number refreshed every minute. People still crave attention, humans always have, but the stage is smaller, the audience mostly real, the feedback slower. Teenagers still feel the sharpness of social pressure, but it is carried through schools and neighborhoods more than through global comment sections. The mental world is different. Fewer constant notifications, fewer endless scrolls, less sense that the entire planet is screaming at once. Yet that calm has a cost. Fewer lifelines for the isolated, fewer communities for the rare and the stigmatized, fewer ways to find your people if they aren't nearby. In this alternate timeline, disasters and emergencies reveal the trade-offs. When a storm knocks out power, information travels by radio and official channels, and rumors spread in lines and shelters rather than across feeds. Coordination depends on local resilience rather than crowdsourced maps. In crises, the world can feel both steadier and more blind. You can almost picture the scenes: a family around a battery radio, a municipal bulletin board covered with printed updates, a hotline number busy for hours, and volunteers organizing at churches because there is no group chat with thousands of strangers offering help in real time. Over decades, the absence of a universal internet shapes the global balance of power. Nations with strong telecom monopolies and information ministries build formidable national networks, and their citizens adapt to life inside those boundaries. Countries that favor open markets develop competitive private services, but the lack of interoperability keeps them regional. Crossing from one system to another feels like crossing a border with paperwork. International business becomes the realm of big players who can negotiate bridges. Small creators reach the world mainly through publishers and distributors who own the channels. The dream that anyone can publish, anyone can build, anyone can reach everyone remains a niche ideology rather than a lived reality. And because that dream never becomes ordinary, the world's imagination of the future changes. Science fiction talks less about cyberspace and more about satellites, broadcast, and closed networks. The hacker is not a folk hero of open protocols, but a trespasser in corporate fortresses. The public grows up thinking of information as something you subscribe to, like electricity, not something you swim in. As the 21st century advances, people still invent remarkable things: AI, automation, advanced robotics, because those can grow inside labs and companies even without a global web. But their diffusion is slower and more controlled. A powerful new tool is more likely to arrive as a product from an established giant than as an open-source project shared freely across the globe. The pace of social change is more tied to institutions, less to sudden online waves. That can mean fewer whiplash cycles of outrage and trend, but it can also mean slower justice for those who depended on visibility to be heard. Who benefits when information has fewer doorways? In the end, this world is not a quiet paradise and not a bleak dystopia. It is a heavier world, where friction is everywhere, and friction decides who gets to move fast. The missing internet does not stop modernity. It reshapes it into something more centralized, more regional, and more mediated. Cities still throb, markets still churn, cultures still collide, but the collisions are slower and the intermediaries stand taller. And the final irony is this: without the internet, people might feel less connected to distant strangers, yet more dependent on the institutions around them. They might be spared the constant roar of a global feed, yet also miss the small miracle of instant shared knowledge. The 20th century's open network experiment never happened. And so the 21st century grows up with a simple rule etched into its daily life. Information is powerful, therefore it is gated. That is what the dominoes lead to. A planet still inventive, still human, still restless, but living in a world where the easiest conversation is the one that stays within the walls, and where the idea of a single, open, borderless commons remains not a memory, but a story that never got the chance to become true.